Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sealess Social Studies. All right, so last chapter we sent you out west, Manifest Destiny, Oregon Trail, Donner Party. Okay, so now we're leaving back out west and we're coming back east, specifically the Northeast, specifically like the New England colony area. All right, the next two chapters we're going to cover are the North, the Northeast, and the South, and primarily Southeast, and what the big difference between the two is, because there was a big difference during the colonial times. There's a big difference today, and this is where you're going to see like a major part of those differences really start to cause a sectionalism in the United States, where there's industry in the North and slavery in the South. So let's get started. Since the dawn of time, and where we're talking about right now, early 1700s, getting into the 1800s, most people living in the world were self-sufficient farmers. They would grow things for themselves. They would make things that they needed by hand. People like blacksmiths, carpenters, shoemakers, they would make things and bring them into town, and they would trade them with farmers. So the farmers couldn't do anything by making shoes, or they couldn't do things by making anything that needed to be made by a blacksmith. So they would go in town and they would trade things, trade food for goods. So this is how they would barter, right? This is how they would get things done back and forth, especially the lower, the poor class of people. What they could not create, they traded for. And in the mid 1700s, something really start to change, especially over in Great Britain or the England area. It's what we call the Industrial Revolution. We've had lots of industrial revolutions. We had the agricultural revolution where people learned how to farm. We will have multiple industrial revolutions. We will have technological revolutions. We will have communication revolutions, transportation revolution. There are a lot of revolutions. But the idea behind the Industrial Revolution is that it's a period of rapid growth using machines to make goods. No longer are we trying to nail things together and everything like that. Now we are going to mechanize things, and the machines will do it for us. So in the early to mid 1700 happens Great Britain. It comes over to the United States in the 1700s, the late 1700s, 1790s, but it doesn't catch on for a while, and I'll explain that when we get there. So the first sources of power of the Industrial Revolution are moving water sources like rivers and streams. What it would do is, you could see a picture here of like one of those water mills. These streams would push this mill, and this mill would turn, and it would in turn, it would spin a pipe, and then that pipe would be connected to a gear, and it would just be a whole mechanization of parts that would wind up in turn doing something. By the time the Industrial Revolution comes to the United States, power sources were more wood or coal burning machines. Now, this is important because, look at that one picture up there on the top left. You see all that smoke? During the beginning, Britain really made a lot of deforesting of their lands, and we do as well. And it burning all that wood, creating all that steam, harvesting or mining all that coal out of the ground and burning all that coal really started to leave a big dust of soot all over everything in Great Britain. Everything was just covered in black soot and black stained, and the rivers were getting poisoned because of how much stuff was coming out of the air from this Industrial Revolution. So a negative impact of industry, unfortunately, is pollution. Now we are doing things like wind energy. We're back to using water energy, solar energy from the sun with solar panels, thermal, nuclear energy. So we're trying to get more clean type of energy to be able to run our country, to run our houses, our home, our businesses. You have to remember, it goes from moving water to steam engines, and then electricity, and then finally, like I said, what we're using today are cleaner sources of energy. Why does the United States need the Industrial Revolution. Remember I said it came over in 1790? It's basically, Thomas Jefferson. Thank you, Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson's embargo of 1807 hurts American trade. Remember, he doesn't want us to trade with Britain anymore. Lower British prices on manufactured goods made it more difficult for American manufacturing to grow. American manufacturing was limited to cotton, flour, weapons, and iron products. So we have this Embargo Act of 1807. We have the Non-Intercourse Act that he passes, that we can't trade with Britain and France. So how does it affect us? Well, it makes us realize that, we kind of don't need them. Right? The War of 1812 cuts off trade with Britain, allowing manufacturing in the United States to really start to flourish. Okay? Americans start realizing our heavy dependence on British trade. Why do we need their stuff so bad? Why don't we start making it ourselves? So this is what really starts to happen in the United States. Jefferson's Embargo Act, his Intercourse Act, and the War of 1812, all that in the beginning part of the early 19th century really forces America into the Industrial Revolution. Economies, especially in the northeastern part of the United States, become centered around manufacturing and the use of factories. Remember when we were talking about our New England colonies? Those were the colonies that had small farms. They did things like fishing, whaling, trading. They had all those big, deep ports up there. So not much is changing. Industry is starting up there. And it really doesn't get south into the southern United States. They're still really heavily on agriculture. The idea behind this Industrial Revolution is to do three things to make things or to produce goods faster, cheaper, and more efficient. And more efficient is the one that we're really going to talk about here, right? Machines are being used to make the manufacturing process more efficient. It speeds the process of production, which leads to the idea of mass production of products. When you can produce a product over and over and over again. Think about this. If you were to be able to make a product, okay, let's say you were making a widget and it took you 2 days to make this widget, and you wanted to go ahead and sell this widget. You might sell the widget for $10, $15. It took you 2 days, so you have to be able to make your money's worth so you could produce another one in 2 more days. Well, with the efficiency of the Industrial Revolution and be able to crank out products much faster, think about what that does, right? So it's more efficient. Instead of making a widget every 2 days, you'll make 50 widgets in 1 day. Okay, so now that's more efficient, right? It's faster. Okay, so now you're creating things faster, more people can get out. And what does it do to the price of your widget? So 1 day, right, or 2 days, you sold it for $15. Now you have 50 of them. You can really drastically reduce that price. So the Industrial Revolution was great for the economy. It made things faster, cheaper, more efficient for Americans and people worldwide. And Eli Whitney's interchangeable parts, his idea of interchangeable parts for muskets, really sped up the process of mass production. Because now what you have is, if a machine breaks, or because he made it for muskets, right? If you're on a battlefield and you're firing away, and then you reload and then something breaks, you'd have to throw away your musket. You'd have to pick up a musket from a dead guy, all right, to go ahead and reuse it. But the interchangeable parts idea, the idea of making a product of smaller parts and reproducing those smaller parts so you only had to replace that part. So let's say the hammer part that fell down and ignited the gunpowder. Let's say that broke. If you didn't have that, you'd have to toss that gun for that one little part. So the idea of interchangeable parts made it, hey, why don't I just mass produce this little hammer piece? I know that hammer piece breaks all the time. So if you're in the battle, if you're on the battlefield and that little hammer part breaks, unscrew it, throw it away, put on that interchangeable part, screw it back on, reload, and fire. So that idea of interchangeable parts, and one not only for muskets, but think about machines. If you built this whole machine and didn't have parts that you can change out, you'd have to trash the whole machine. So interchangeable parts and mass production really help just expand and explode that economy in the northeastern part of the United States.